Tonight on CFTK-TV News, Northwest Police announce new funding and body cam rollouts. The Prime Minister arrives at a NATO conference, and a sneak peek of an upcoming production.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. I'm Jaylene Matthews. We begin tonight with our news that's local to the Northwest. BC's Minister of Lands and Natural Resources is touring Northwest BC on a land planning tour, consulting with local nations on how lands will be used in the future. Minister Randine Neal says the goal is to define where to conserve and where to build, and to navigate that in partnership with local nations and communities.
You know what, I think that what's remarkable, especially in this case in the Northwest, is that community has been asking for this for a long time. They've been asking for clarity and certainty and predictability. So they've been talking to their communities, and so they've already defined many of the values that we're looking to achieve. And so what our job is now is in the next year to come up and work with them, work with the community, work with the outdoor rec community, and really say, okay, what values are important to you in this area? And then we'll start the process, and within 12 months, we hope to have land use plans for four specific areas: for the Tahltan, for the TRT, Taku River Tlingit, for the Casca, and for Gitmiao, and for the Meziadin specifically in that area, which is stunning. We were up there yesterday.
The province is engaging with industry, community, and other partners to implement what they call world-leading land use plans that will provide greater certainty for investors, First Nations, and communities alike. And Kitimat RCMP are the latest in the Northwest to roll out the use of body cams. The department says resident officers have just completed the training required and have been issued body-worn cameras. They say body-worn video provides increased transparency. Officers will activate cameras during calls for service. They are not intended for 24-hour use or surveillance. The Terrace and Smithers departments have also stated they'll be rolling out body-worn cameras for their officers as well. And in Terrace, we can expect to see increased police presence thanks to new funding. Terrace RCMP say they've secured a significant amount of funding from the provincial government for overtime shifts, specifically for proactive patrols in targeted hotspot crime areas in Terrace. The funding is provided through the Government of BC's Communities Safety and Targeted Enforcement Program. The force says that in 2024, a grant was received from the Special Investigation and Targeted Enforcement Program, which was used for additional overtime shifts. They say officers on patrol received positive feedback from the community, and thanks to the positive outcome, Terrace RCMP were able to make a successful application for the new C-STEP funding. The funding will provide an increase to downtown proactive patrols by officers, either on foot or bicycle. Members of Terrace can expect to see an increased police presence from June 27th through to October 18th. Coming up next, the hills are alive with the sound of music. The magic of the sound of music is returning to the spotlight, this time brought to life by the passionate performers of Carmen Arts Group. CFTK-TV's Helen Asante reports.
With lively choreography, soaring vocals, and the unforgettable score we all know, this rendition of Sound of Music is more than just a throwback. It's a full cycle of celebration of the joy and hope that music brings.
I haven't watched The Sound of Music until I've got accepted to the play. After I watched the movie, I was like, oh, I'm really excited for this.
Even though it's an old movie, the lessons that are taught in it last, or like would you say, like eternal, or they last a lifetime. How she, when she's in the Abbey, she tries to hide from her problems, but it doesn't work. And it's a lifelong lesson how you can't hide from your problems.
I've done it last year with the Carmen Arts Group. Last in the Pirates of Penzance. I played in the orchestra. It was really fun because you get to meet a whole bunch of other people and talented musicians, and you can make new friends.
Definitely Edelweiss. My mom loved that song, and my grandma did too. And now, in this production, it's sang so beautifully. It's definitely my favorite part.
Really uplifting, serious, funny in bits, and mostly just beautiful.
Come out, buy a ticket, support us with that. If we sell tickets, it allows us to do our next show, and also encourage the people who've come onto the stage. You can buy your tickets at Misty River Books. The show, we have a matinee for kids, so you can come out with your children. So Saturday there's 2 shows. There's one at 1 and then there's one at 7. And on Sunday night there's another show at 7. And so it's a great thing to come out to with your grandchildren, your children. Buy a ticket, support the Carmen Arts Group, and support our community.
The curtain rises this weekend. Join us again tomorrow for part 2 of our feature on the Sound of Music production. And voting has begun on the leadership of BC opposition leader and Nechako Lakes MLA John Rustad, amid questions about his handling of a group of former Conservative MLAs he accused of trying to blackmail their former colleagues. Rustad says voting has taken place in at least 2 ridings, and he expects the process to wrap up in December once members in all 3 ridings have taken part. Rustad says he's pretty optimistic about the outcome and adds he has not heard a lot of negativity except from what he called a very small group of dissidents. The 3 former Conservative MLAs, Dallas Brody, Tara Armstrong, and Jordan Keeley, have all denied the accusations. A survivor of the deadly rock fall at Bow Glacier in Banff National Park is telling his story and the story of the friend he lost. Here's CTV's Shannon Patterson.
This photo of Khalid El Gamal and Hamza Ben Hilal was taken the day before the close friends and roommates from Surrey set out to explore Bow Glacier in Banff National Park.
We were just enjoying the moment and the view, and we're having some snacks, and then we just heard that loud noise, and then shortly after the rocks fell.
When the side of the cliff gave way last Thursday, sending rocks crashing onto the trail below, El Gamal, who works as a financial advisor in Port Moody, froze. It was his friend's voice that snapped him out of it.
He did scream out loud, telling me to run, and that's kind of like what helped me get back on to my senses and start running, because I was like in a shock, and I thought it seemed like a movie scene, just seeing rocks coming from the sky there.
As El Gamal lost sight of Ben Halil, falling rocks started hitting his legs.
I fell to the ground, and then all I remember is I did my head, I covered my head with my arms, and I just gave positioned my back towards the rocks, and just kept suffering the rock falls. Rock after another was hitting my back.
Somehow El Gamal survived and was able to walk off the trail to find help.
I kept telling them, my friend, where's my friend? Nobody was able to locate him. Nobody was able to see him. We did not know what happened until we heard the news that he was found under the rubble.
El Gamal is in a Calgary hospital with multiple broken bones, but the deeper pain is for the loss of his friend.
He was a very, very generous and a very nice person.
Ben Hilal worked as a network engineer in Burnaby. His brother is flying in to bring the 33-year-old's body back to his home country of Morocco.
We're hoping anybody would kind of like figure something out to compensate the family for their loss.
El Gamal says he owes his life to his friend's quick thinking.
If it wasn't for him, I would have just stood my ground there in shock because I froze. I don't know. My mind just disengaged at that moment, and he screamed and told me to run, and then I survived.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News.
Turning to the weather, the sun rose at 4:57 a.m. this morning in the northwest and sets at 10:16 p.m. tonight. And you won't see much of the moon in the sky tonight. It's a waning crescent at 1% illumination. Tonight on the north coast, expect rain with winds from the southeast at 20 kilometers an hour, temperatures steady near 12 degrees. Over the next few days on the north coast, expect showers, rain and clouds with temperatures around 13 to 15 degrees. Overnight lows between 11 and 12 degrees. Tonight in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expect it to be cloudy with a 60% chance of showers, winds from the south at 20 kilometers an hour, a low of 11 degrees. Over the next few days in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expect showers, rain and clouds getting into the weekend. Daily highs between 15 and 17 degrees, overnight lows from 10 to 11 degrees. Tonight in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, it's looking mainly cloudy with a 60% chance of showers this evening with a risk of thunderstorm, local smoke, winds from the southwest at 20 kilometers an hour, a low of 8 degrees. Over the next few days in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, expect a steady mix of sun and clouds with maybe some showers on Sunday. Daily highs between 19 and 21 degrees, overnight lows steady at 9 degrees. Checking your northwest highways now. On Highway 16, there's construction in Prince Rupert with a detour in effect, as well as bridge maintenance, mowing, utility work, and crack sealing going on. On Highway 37, there's bridge construction, frost heaves, and a material spill to watch out for. On Highway 37A, there's bridge maintenance and a section with falling rocks. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, an update on the conflict in the Middle East. British Columbia's Fraser Health Authority says measles infections have been confirmed in 3 Chilliwack residents since Friday, and the cases appear to have been acquired locally. A statement from Fraser Health says the 3 had no reported travel history and it is investigating to determine the source of infection. The cases are in people who have not been vaccinated against measles. The latest infections come after the Interior Health Authority announced Tuesday that it had also a confirmed case of measles in a person in Kamloops. A bulletin from Northern Health earlier this month also said it had identified multiple lab-confirmed cases of measles in the community of Wanawan, northwest of Fort St. John. The June 13th statement from Northern Health says that while the initial case in that region appears to have been acquired through travel, medical officers believe the infection had since begun circulating in the community. And Prime Minister Mark Carney is in the Netherlands to talk defense spending with other world leaders. CTV's Jeremy Sharon is there.
The second part of Prime Minister Mark Carney's European trip gets underway today here in The Hague, where a highly anticipated NATO summit will begin. The leaders of all 32 NATO members will convene here in The Hague, where it's expected all of the focus will be on a new defense spending target. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney and his government just pledged earlier this month to reach the current target of 2% of GDP on defense spending. They've promised to do that this fiscal year, nearly 10 years, or about 10 years after NATO members agreed to do it. The conversation this year will be on increasing that spending limit to 5% to be exact, something President Donald Trump has pushed for. He has led the charge to increase that limit, and it is expected that NATO members will agree to increase that limit here at this summit. Now, it will be broken down to allow for members to try and reach that target a little easier. It will be 3.5% on hard defense spending, with an additional 1.5% on things like infrastructure and supportive defense spending. What is not clear yet is how long members will have to reach that target. That will be part of the discussion here, as the leaders will meet tomorrow for what will be the big meeting and what will conclude Prime Minister Mark Carney's European trip, where we'll expect to get more concrete details about just how that commitment will work for the NATO members. Jeremy Sherrill, CTV News, The Hague.
Prime Minister Mark Carney says he welcomes the announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran after nearly 2 weeks of fighting. Carney says no Canadian troops were hurt at the U.S. base in Qatar targeted by Iranian missiles yesterday. Carney calls Iran's military action a diplomatic move and says it leaves the door open for diplomacy. Canada has begun helping Canadians leave Israel, and a chartered flight with more than 100 on board is set to leave Jordan this evening. Here's CTV's Joy Malbon.
After brokering a fragile ceasefire, the U.S. president visibly angry and let the F word fly.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Sending a message to warring nations, Israel and Iran, to knock it off.
I think they both violated it. I'm not sure they did it intentionally. They couldn't rein people back. I don't like the fact that Israel went out this morning at all, and I'm going to see if I can stop it.
After agreeing to Donald Trump's ceasefire overnight, the Israeli army struck hard at Iranian government targets, including a radar site north of Tehran. And Israel says it struck back too, after Iranian missiles had been fired in the south, killing 4 Israelis. The president trying to hold this truce together, telling reporters he was firm, demanding Israel's prime minister bring back its planes and stop the bombing.
Tired of it. I think they don't want it to happen again. And Iran's not going to have a nuclear weapon, by the way. I think it's the last thing on their mind right now.
After the U.S. bombed 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities deep underground and days of Israeli strikes on nuclear targets, Iran has been weakened. But how far has Tehran nuclear ambitions been set back?
Is there any highly enriched uranium left? And are there any of these centrifuges left as well? That's a big question.
Turning to the markets now, strength in technology stocks helped Canada's main stock index climb over 100 points today, while U.S. markets also rose and oil prices fell. The Canadian dollar gained 0.2 cents. The price of gold dropped 61.10. Oil fell $4.14. Natural gas dropped 14 cents. Aluminum was up $70. In Toronto, the TSX gained 109 points. The Venture Index rose almost 2 points. In New York, the Nasdaq gained 282 points, and the Dow Jones rose by 507. Still ahead, an unforgettable fine dining experience. Welcome back. Researchers say southern resident killer whales in BC's Salish Sea are using kelp like a grooming tool, rubbing it between their bodies. A study in the journal Current Biology shows that southern residents of all ages and sexes use bull kelp for what may be both hygiene and bonding purposes. Drones captured the whales pressing kelp between each other, something scientists say hasn't been seen in other whale species. The lead author says it's a rare case of tool use that helps two animals at once, and it's common across the whole population. A trend-setting upscale dining experience in Port Hardy is elevating the tourism experience in the rural area. CTV's Andy Garland explains.
It's called Hame.
Hame means to eat.
It's a fine dining restaurant in Port Hardy, specializing in local, indigenous cuisine such as oysters, fish, mushrooms, and berries. Much of that is harvested from northern Vancouver Island.
You'll be able to experience that West Coast cuisine that is unique because it draws from those pieces that are also uniquely indigenous.
It allows us an opportunity to share our story and share our culture.
On Friday, there was a cultural blessing at the restaurant in the Coelelas Hotel, which is owned and operated by the Watula Nakwita First Nation. The nation's Economic Development Corporation says this is a demonstration in food security and economic resilience.
People can come and actually support that by visiting the hotel and actually eating at Hame. They get to support a nation's vision of how they're pursuing that.
The BC Restaurant and Food Services Association says there are 15,000 restaurants in the province, and roughly only 25 of them are Indigenous.
I think there's really something to this from a tourism point of view. And in fact, when those things happen, especially in Port Hardy, they become destinations for people.
Tourism Vancouver Island North says the North Island does lack fine dining options and thinks Hame is a great opportunity to attract more people to the area.
The most amazing wildlife and scenery and wild open spaces up here, but having those elevated experiences like the fine dining and the nicer, upgraded newer hotels and just really elevating the experience.
There's hope Hame will draw people to the region, so the nation is launching cultural tours and fishing charters soon to enhance their stays. Andy Garland, CTV News.
An unlikely sight in the streets of Burnaby stopped some residents in their tracks and trapped in their cars for a bit. Here's CTV's John Venevali Rao.
We're not entirely sure what led them to Burnaby's Beaverbrook Crescent. We do know it's an unusual sight, especially this sort of behavior playing out right in the middle of the street. One seems to dominate, the other clicking its jaw, sounding rather displeased.
I didn't know what to think. So we didn't know what was happening or how it started happening.
Matthew Chow began recording, keeping his distance safely in a car, while the two black bears, not the least bit concerned they brought traffic to a halt, remained clearly focused on each other.
And some cars backed away, some cars turned around and left.
But as the bears began snarling, growling, taking brief breaks to catch their breath, not a single person approached. No one honked their horn on Saturday afternoon. They knew they just had to let nature play itself out.
So the two bears were fighting each other, and it got intense at some points where they were ripping each other's fur out.
Black bear brawls are nothing new, but they don't usually fight in front of humans. Often it's a dispute over mating, dominance, or territory. And these showdowns are not always quick.
About an hour or so.
It went on for an hour?
Yeah.
So you guys couldn't go anywhere, could you?
No, we just stayed. It went by fast.
The incident was reported to conservation officers, and word spread that two large bears are in the neighborhood.
I go for walks every day by this area, by the creek, and I think it's going to scare me now for a while.
We're told this long battle eventually drew to an end, and the bears wandered back into the woods. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Burnaby.
That's our news for now. For more local news, you can visit us at cftktv.com. We're also on YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, and X. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.